What channel?
It's going to be on X-Ray Vision.
Okay.
And I'm going to pull it up and make sure we're live before we actually start hammering.
I'll second.
Yep, there we go. We're live. So I'm going to copy this and put it in the chat for you guys.
Cool.
And let me pause.
Outstanding. Thank you. So, how's life? David, Crypto Kool-Aid. X-Ray Vision.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
You too, man. We're moving and grooving now, man. We've had some pretty interesting updates in terms of Pulse Chain and the whatnot. What do you got for us, Feeder? What's going on in the Pulse Chain world right now?
So the latest update to Pulse Chain testnet just came out like 2-3 days ago. It was version 0.7, which is great. Sadly, it did not have the test Pulse Chain sacrifice airdrop. So sadly, that was not included this round. Yeah. So we're still waiting for that major update. So overall, the patch went fine. It was not a big deal, but we're still waiting for the key one, which has not been released yet.
Cool. And I think hex.com has been revamped a bit and
looks
relaunched. Great. So that's pretty good too. Crypto Kool-Aid, how you doing, man? It's been a couple weeks, I guess, since we last spoke.
Yeah, man, things are really, really good. It's been a long week of work, and then I was on support to help with Mats and Ricky on the NASCAR. And that all, we got everything for them done on Friday, and then just relaxing over the weekend, and then another start to some big things coming up this next week that everyone's working on. So yeah, things are really, really good.
You look good, man. You look healthy. You look rested, actually, believe it or not.
One of the few times I was streaming with the Aussies at like 4 a.m. Saturday morning or Friday night for me because I stayed awake. But yeah, I rested all day yesterday and ready to have another fun week.
Alistair, what about you, X-Ray Vision? You friggin' traveling the world, loving life?
I'm just trying to keep up with the Hexicans and keep up with my family, and neither of them slow down. Yeah. They're always going and running. There's always some new amazing thing that some brainchild or an event that people are getting together and getting smarter at. Like you saw Motley and the crew hanging out in Colorado just recently, streaming with Richard Hart, no big deal. Just, sponsoring NASCARs, setting the world on fire, whatever.
Yeah. Epic. So the $600,000 that was raised to be able to do that, so at this point, it's a for sure. It's a go. It's going to happen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like you know a little bit about it, Crypto Kool-Aid. What can you talk about? Were you in charge of what?
I was just helping on the back end on the car design. I've never wrapped a car before. They ended up going with the internal NASCAR stuff because, of course, that's what they do best. But with zero time to make adjustments or anything, I just wanted to be there as someone that understands 3D production, the whole institution of running and gunning and getting something out the door, that at least they had something. So, I was talking with Ricky pretty much every morning in the AM, trying to figure out what they had and what they needed because, they only had like 4 days to pull the whole damn thing off. I was on a couple calls with Josh, the guy that has a connection to JJ Yealy, I believe the racer's name is. So, like I said, I was just back-end support. I know that they do have the money. They do have the design for the car. The last I heard, they were working on the uniforms. That probably has already been completed. I know Motley has a bunch of tickets that he was giving away.
Yeah.
So it's just, NASCAR really isn't my thing, but it's a huge opportunity for more eyeballs to have conversations to go around. And the bigger thing is it had no support from Richard, not a single tweet. Granted, he was busy doing other things, but it was all community crowdfunded. And if we look at that now, the Hexican ideals are able to do their own things to actually get the work out there. Richard said, no profit from the work of others. And if you want something, go build it. And that's what people have done. They've come together as, a unified front. And now we have a NASCAR, and talk about how crazy that is. that I would never think that would be something that we would do, but that's what the community did for themselves, right? No profit from the work of others, profit and help others. So we can now come into these things to actually move forward as a unit.
Yeah, I totally agree. Something that I've noticed lately with Sci-Vive is basically someone said recently is a call to action. It's saying, hey, if you want things to get better in your life, these are the action steps you need to take. And a lot of the recent streams we've heard from Richard, he's saying, hey, these are some of the things that I would like to see happen. These are the things the Hexicans can do to move us forward as fast as possible. And so that's what it is. I think that a lot of the OGs and the excited newer Hexicans that are part of our community, they're all stepping forward. They're all putting puzzle pieces together, putting events together, and really, starting to snowball. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and if you look at the Daytona 500, I think the average viewership over the past 10 years is probably about 9 or 10 million on that day. So, I don't think that's a bad thing, especially if he pulls it out of his ass and wins the Daytona 500. That'd be kind of freaking cool, right? Nobody's talking about that.
I've never been to NASCAR, but this would be the one to go to, man. That's for damn sure. The Hex car, that's the coolest shit. That'd be sweet, man. Be like, yeah, I know that.
Cultural event, man. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a friggin' Daytona 500, man.
Definitely. That'll get a lot of eyeballs, a lot of attention. Very exciting.
Yeah.
And if he, like you said, if he wins, then oh man, then it's times extra.
That'd be crazy, dude. Absolutely.
I think the crazier thing is like NASCAR people, things, and brands have been seen so many times. It's the same recycling, the same people, the same cars, the same everything. We're just out of the woodwork. Literally, we didn't even know we were doing it 2 weeks ago. So it'll be a brand new image, a brand new idea. And if it wins, man, a lot of people will be like, what's this Hex.com thing? And I can't wait to see the eyes of the influencers if we actually take
it. It's gonna go crazy. People are going to be forced. Can you imagine like somebody who trashed Hex being forced to watch the Daytona 500 and see that 500
Oh my God. And it's just the wildest thing. Now we've got, professional athletes coming forward with, Justice Hill and Keegan. And we had a boxer on Discourse Syndicate recently.
That's all that. With Mayweather.
It's just we are starting to attract not just crypto people, but people with influence. And those influence will get more and more legs. It's no longer about just Richard. It's about other people getting things in front of other people that doesn't even have any relation to Richard.
Yeah, I saw Michael Morton, I think it was this morning, shilling Hex to a guy a professional football player, soccer player. Mm-hmm. Had 350,000 followers on Twitter.
Wow.
So
nice.
The thing that I like about these athletes too, it's not like they're just quiet. They're actually engaging. Like Justice Hill tweeted out this morning. He said, something about Hexico or whatever the case may be. So he's not just in the background. I like that about him.
Totally.
Right.
And he was at the conference, which was great. Yeah.
Yep. Sunday, February 20th at 2:30 p.m. Daytona 500. So I'm pretty sure everybody's going to be watching that. Maybe I can stream that illegally and not get caught for everybody.
If you do it on Twitch in a little screen while you play the NASCAR Twitch game, you could totally get away with it. Just have it in the corner. People do it all the time.
You already thought about that. We have a watch party.
There you go.
So shout out to Blue Bum. He says, "What's up, Texicans?"
Texicans. I love it.
The crazy thing is I'll actually be in Florida at that time, but I'll just be coming off of a burn. So, I won't be able to see it, but I will be in the region. But it's so wild because at that point when I was booking the RV for the Love Burn, I couldn't find one because there was this damn car race going on. And then, lo and behold, a few weeks later, we're like, wow, that is the craziest serendipitous thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So you and I were talking a little bit, and so was Hex Vision about this NFT thing that popped up, man. Mm-hmm. This security vulnerability. I have a kind of an understanding of it, but what are your thoughts on that?
Sure, and we can go over kind of like a broad stroke of kind of what I've talked about in back room and front room, because I think a lot of that stuff has been put in front of everyone for a while. So as a global concurrent whole, an NFT is just an identity. It's just a social security number. It's just a throughput. And if you think about email, right? Email is just a connection between one talking thing and another talking thing. If you didn't have an attachment, it would just be a protocol to send and receive, right? But the attachment is what makes just an email unique, besides talking between two different devices. So would an email even be useful if it didn't have attachments? No, because you'd have to use a different protocol to send something more than just text. So an NFT, if we take that same kind of simple logic, is just a social security number that can hold social security numbers, that can nest social security numbers. And all of those have different interactions, whether that's through a DAO or an oracle, or many different ways that you can bend the future or like mold of what the future is going to be. If you take my pet rock analogy, the pet rock and all of that hubbub about .com being the future, it imploded. But look at the things that came out of that throughput. It was Amazon at $5, and it survived. And so without the petrock.com implosion, the throughput wouldn't be there to actually have everyone have a .com. This NFT bubble of just silly JPEGs will eventually pop, but what will be left is the throughput of application of identity across the internet, whether that's wrapped through advertising, whether that's wrapped through multiple different contracts spending on top of each other. The usefulness will start to show rather than the hype. So right now, something that I saw was interesting is that there is an NFT on OpenSea that apparently someone is just sending to people. And if you interact with it, it essentially shares your IP address with the person that sent it or something malicious like that. Well, if you also look at something else that I was reading on OpenSea is that people are taking basically open bid orders and they're forgetting about them and they're moving their NFT off of their one wallet into another. And if that NFT ever comes back into that wallet address that has the open sell or open bid, people are front running it at the cost of what it originally was and essentially automatically executing. So looking at the danger of something that can be put into your wallet that you did not place there, and just to get rid of it or interacting in it, the trap door pretty much explodes. It's a little concerning. And it's concerning because it's like the same other fact that you can use an NFT through an oracle and do some really, really, really productive things to help build the world, as people could do to hinder and do it for evil, malicious purposes.
Yeah. I think so. To kind of summarize what they found, there was a guy who uncovered this. It was a security vulnerability. If a malicious actor only knows your blockchain address, they can mint an NFT with a URL pointing back to his server and transfer the NFT's ownership to your address. So when your crypto wallet fetches the remote image from the server, it will essentially compromise your privacy. They'll be able to track your IP. And I think that, and like we said, MetaMask knew about this for a pretty long time, but they didn't do anything about it to fix it. And once they were called out, they were like, "Oh, sorry, we'll get on it. We'll patch this up." So it's kind of interesting, man. I didn't expect it, but I think it's also only if it's on mobile, your mobile MetaMask instance. I think they said that, but I'm not sure why that would make.
I didn't do too much digging into it because my day was my day of rest and not trolling through the internet that never ends. But but just knowing that is a problem. It's like knowing that there's a speed trap somewhere ahead of you when you're speeding on the road, right? You should always. And by the way, what's going on, Team Money? You should never have an excuse that you aren't aware of what's going on with this space. It moves too fast. It's too dynamic, and it is the future. So why would you be lazy with the knowledge of your wallet or the knowledge of what you're going to do? It's like having an excuse that you didn't understand that you invested in a bad stock or a bank that goes under or anything else, you are responsible for your own future, whether you want to take caution to it or not.
Yeah, one of the questions in the chat that just popped up, would running a VPN help with that? VPN or what? I mean,
it would help with
that fixes
it would help with the sending of your IP, but then the bigger problem is you have something consistently sniffing your IP. Right. So what if your VPN software got a critical error and now your trunk is live and going on? Or what if that little bugger that's there is now shifting over to something else, right? That it shoots out an email, it leaves a packet somewhere. There's what you want to be leery is what can feasibly come after you. But yeah, Feeder, you can talk to more about VPNs and trunks than I can.
Yeah, this new recent hack, it's mostly for targeting whales, I would imagine, right? I want to find a fat wallet that's humongous. Let's pretend it's a god whale. You send him that NFT. Next time he logs into MetaMask, boom, his MetaMask goes to the server, fetches the request with the IP address. Now I've got his IP. If you go to ip-tracker.org, you can put an IP address in from anywhere, and it'll show you a circle on the map of the world where that IP is. And now you have an idea of where that person came from. Using a VPN on your phone or on your computer or on your firewall, so you have a VPN connection to another city or another country or a different place, that'll secure you, as long as, like Kool-Aid said, it's got to be up and running. As long as your VPN is on, they'll see that IP address somewhere else. And then you could just empty the funds in your wallet that got the bad NFT. Move your liquid hex, move your liquid ETH, just drain it, try not to use it, and then carry on. So that's what I would do. It's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world, but it's multiple layers of social engineering to track someone. Ben, also shout out to my friend Ro that's going to come over later today, and we're going to try to get her onboarded. But it realized that many pieces of the puzzle act as different attack vectors, right? Social engineering is talking to someone that you know and getting the information that you want out of them. This just gives an opportunity to just have an idea of where you are, and that's just the start of an exploit, right? You think about some Ocean's 11 thing. They didn't rob the bank with one swoop. They had multiple different tiers of things that you have to go through, and just being aware of those tiers is what being involved in this space is all about.
So let me just make a suggestion. I think the faster that we get away from MetaMask as our wallet and into something maybe community driven or community created, I would trust that a lot more than I trust other vulnerabilities or problems we may have in the future with MetaMask. That's just my opinion.
It just seemed the explanation that he gave just seemed so freaking unprofessional. Like there was no excuse. He didn't expound on it. He's like, yeah, to be honest, we've known about it for a while. We just haven't done anything about it. That's why I kind of agree with what you say, Hexray Vision. If you have something that's community driven, it's worked out by people who actually care about everybody else.
Right.
That was a lousy excuse. Very lousy.
Yeah. And so,
I think that just even eventually I'd like to see something like Telegram that's community driven, right? Because Telegram is so bloody toxic. But if you had something that was correlated to some other identifier that would keep you honest and a good actor, it's just something in the future that I think we need to look at as a community. Now we're sponsoring Daytona cars. Now we're building institutional entities like MCA, where we're doing all these other things that eventually we're going to want to make our own community communication that actually is for us driven, because we had not only have the network power, the liquidity, and the same thing as it was a failed success. I think it was called ONG, which was a blockchain based Facebook. The future of that kind of stuff, I think, is going to start to rapidly move forward, right? And we will have those governance areas that we use to protect ourselves, and we don't use the excuse that we don't care about the vulnerability, because we do.
Right. Now, moving away from the idea, like I only thought, like people said, NFTs are serial numbers loosely related to JPEGs, maybe songs. And at their best case use that I saw previous to meeting you, Crypto Kool-Aid, and hearing about the idea of more like a social security and a way to wrap contracts, I thought the best thing you could do with an NFT is launder money, like rich people have done with fine art for centuries.
Sure.
I saw that as its only use case. But could you speak to some of the people that still see the NFTs for, because I mean, most NFTs you see right now are people gambling on JPEGs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or digitally rendered art,
Sure.
or just spitting it out. So you're saying you wrap something in, you wrap a smart contract in an NFT, and that increases its utility, right?
Right. Well, let's just take what's going on with Hedron, essentially. What Alex has done, and he can always speak to the more technical side, because what I do is I'm a puzzle person. I can look at all of the puzzle pieces without a picture, and I see how they all link together, and then I sit and I look at that. And that's just kind of what I do professionally. So if we look at Hedron, for example, you're still holding your own keys. You're still using your Metamask and your keys to make a stake. You're just making the stake through a wrapper of Hedron, and that Hedron has a utility, and that allows it to grow and expand as it goes. If you look at Sam Firebun's way of staking, they stake through a nested pool, and essentially you can piece off parts of the pool to essentially sell or trade encapsulated stakes. So just that utility in and of itself would make most of the stakes within, especially the Ethereum side, 55555, because why wouldn't you if you can get a piece of it should you need it to sell it on an open market? Now, if you take it outside of just staking, an NFT is just a unique protocol that can be used and put through a DAO into an oracle and do different separate things. So let's just say that you did a rolling stake ladder to fund, let's just say Mad Energy's little boat that takes plastic, and it used plastic as a closed loop to actually go forward and bill it. So if a particular entity staked a monthly staking ladder for 15 years, every month that entity could take that stake and then sell it as a layer of spot, right? So a limit order directly under spot. And what it does is it sets a floor that no matter what, it is actually running up the limit order to actually not cash out and dump the price, but helps set a buy floor that moves forward going under. And then it would take that and sell that and move that into another DAO or an oracle, which then would invoice the Mad Energy or the people that are doing that to build this little boat. And so every month, without even putting sell pressure on the market, they're actually taking interest in equity and building these products to help save the world, whether that's green energy and MAD, or if we talk about my Flint analogy on creating a super city through a DAO. An NFT is the interoperability for multiple pieces of this puzzle to have its own unique identity and superstructure. And what you can do with that is limitless to how you want to use an individual marker, right? You know what I mean? And that's the difference is that it actually takes a smart contract, which is kind of like the evolution of what real crypto is, and gives it a unique marker that you can do whatever you want with said smart contract.
Yeah, in the questions in the chat, we have a question. Won't wrapping kick us in the nuts when it comes to EES fees in the future?
Yeah, but why do you really, really want EES fees when the price never go down? Like, you're looking at when you calculate your bills and rent, do you really look at the change on the end of it to be like, add 14 cents to 32 cents to 16 cents? Do you really need the cents if you're already earning the best interest and the price never goes down? Now, the EES fees, not everyone will wrap their stuff, right? Only certain people that understand it will wrap their stuff. And then there's also, Hex on Pulse Chain, which is going to be a different power play. Like on Hex on Pulse Chain, people will be doing daily stakes, weekly stakes, monthly stakes, all the rest of that. With Ethereum Hex, why wouldn't you go out that far into the future? Especially if you can take a piece of it that you wouldn't want anyways. Furthermore, you should probably have multiple wallets that you do everything anyways. Like everyone should take, if their legacy big payday, should take their major wallet and divide those into multiple wallets and spread that all out. And then some maybe you put through Hedron. Some maybe you just do legacy 5555. Some maybe you put through staker. You should use all the avenues of opportunity available to you just in case what if, right?
Yeah. Well, and I have a prediction that eventually ETH is going to copy paste Pulse Chain's code and they're going to fork. So you're going to have your same 15-year stakes on, ETH 2.0. So those should be more affordable than the regular Ethereum, right? And I've also got an analogy really quick that I think might help people wrap their mind around. Imagine you have a wine that you want to age for 15 years or a fine cheese for 15 years. Well, right now, our stakes are nailed to the floor inside of our barns, right? So if we break open that crate of wine or cheese or try to move it, we destroy that 15-year process. And what Hedron's trying to do is put it in a barrel or a container where we can sell cheese or wine that we've aged 3 to 5 years. If we need the money, we can sell that to someone else who can finish out that aging process, right?
What a great analogy. It's like a barrel of bourbon. Exactly. Yep. It's like it's delicious bourbon.
Exactly. But you never know when an act of God or something happens that you have to have the money, right? And so what you want to do is have options available. I mean, Rory had a very similar analogy to this, if we remember way back when, that he has his army of 10-year stakes that he can just nuke when he wants. And when he gets to this other thing, he's just like, fuck it, I don't care. Instead of having all of this, I could be like, here's my 15-year stakes, and be like, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, because I want that money, right? And so it's the same methodology of that. It's just has more legs and more opportunity to grow. Tony, it looks like you're muted.
Yeah, Tony, I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Go ahead and try to get that unmuted. Go ahead.
I think he's got input settings. It's the thing that was screwed with me when I had to reboot.
Maybe your it's not talking to your mic. I did have a really quick question. Also, when someone wraps Ethereum on one,
go
ahead, Tony.
Oh, okay, you guys can hear me now? All right.
There we go.
So
welcome to the party, Tony.
Thanks. Okay. See you guys. Hey, so just really quick. So one thing about the cheese, and going back to the wine and the cheese analogy that you had, but imagine you're a cheese and wine factory, right? You're doing multiple 15-year wine and cheese. Then you can grab your, like, if you want to have more, you can actually cycle it. So this is where I'm kind of thinking Hedron is really unique because, okay, so I got 15-year, I have to wait 15 years for this to mature. Now, if I can collect, I got these cheese and wines that have go on 5 years, 10 years. I could still collect and make more stakes with those Hedrons, right? And start the process and even have more. So now you're cycling even more to have more. Do you know?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually how that works, and this is a question I have to sit down with Alex to actually kind of wrap over again. I believe claiming it is different than minting it. And essentially, if you leave the minting till right before the stake ends, then you'll get the most amount. But you must mint before you end
stake.
Correct. So you could claim some Hedron off of a fresh stake, but you're not going to get as much as if you waited to mint till it was actually done. So that's where inherently the trading of the encapsulated stake gets even juicier if you have the unminted Hedron available as well as the stake that is available, if that makes sense. It actually divides it into two different categories of when the Hedron is used and when it's not used.
Well, and I think you can also mint and claim after good accounting, but not after end stake. So you can good account and pause it and still be able to claim and mint the Hedron. If I'm correct, Just guessing.
That's true.
Let me ask
true.
a quick
You're right.
question about the wrapping, because we're told if someone, let's say we have the wrapped ETH or the wrapped Bitcoin on the Ethereum network, we have to trust the third party that they're going to honor that wrap, right? Like they're going to unwrap it at close to the same value. Is there a way we can use a protocol to trust wrapping this stuff so we're not trusting human beings?
That's essentially what you would want through like an audited DAO or things like that. So instead of like having, if everything's audited, then we know it's audited, right? And
that's
so
what wrapping is today too, by the way. Like that's how wrapped Bitcoin works, or REN BTC, like REN BTC,
Yeah.
which is you bring it to Ethereum. That's exactly what it is. They're federated servers, quasi decentralized, and it's a smart contract that locks the Bitcoin in the wallet, and then you can always come back later and throw in the REN BTC and they'll send you Bitcoin. So it is software.
Awesome.
Right. But like, I think that we're going to have more of those. I mean, we already know we're going multi-chain as everything. It's obvious that that's the parallels we're all going, right? We started with a horse and buggy way back when, and now we have, trains, planes, and automobiles. So
two chains. There's two good ones. So there's Ethereum and then Pulse Chain.
Well, just think about in the future, there'll be more and more and more things happening, whether that's oracles for tracking cars, which tracks packages, which does all the rest of these type of things. And then subchains will be based on other subchains and talking to other subchains. And, if Pulse gets, let's just say, bogged down in 5-10 years, if there's an oracle or a chain that just does interoperability of tracking packages, what if they shatter off a different version or utility that uses Pulse, but it doesn't need to clog up the Pulse network with other.
But nobody would use a blockchain for like inventory or like a car, like that VeChain, like car,
exactly,
like tracker, like. But nobody needs a blockchain for that because nobody wants to censor those databases. So like nobody does that. Those things aren't useful
yet. I think like when I was an ICO influencer in 2017, I did a review of Smart Realty on the blockchain in 2017. Totally trash. But in the future, if you think about a real estate contract as an NFT, that is already more or less on its way to coming forward. It doesn't need its own blockchain. It just needs its own NFT, right? Based on the utility of what's going on.
Yeah, but the town hall and the government are too stupid to ever interface with that technology, so it'll never work for house deeds either.
Well, and that's the whole premise of building like a Flintopia, right? So like my analogy of Flint is, let's just say you wanted to save all the kids in Flint that have been bathing in lead for 10 years and no one gives a shit. Well, if you look, what's up?
Flint, Michigan?
Yeah.
With the poisoned water? Okay.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure we're, okay, yep.
Yep. All the poisoned water. Nobody cares. It was a big hubbub 10 years ago, and now more or less people worry about covering their face, that's a problem, and those kids, that you turn on the faucet and it's red water. So if you had to go there and you had to fix the plumbing literally to get out all the pipes, you might as well throw high-range fiber optic internet in the ground because you're already there fixing the plumbing. 100%. Well, if you're going to do that, you might as well look at taking the road that you just dug up and putting solar panels into the ground to take all of that energy that's already used and then use something like Power in 2017 to take that energy and put it back onto the grid, give the people that collect that energy payment for things like that. Well, if you're going to do that, you might as well look at charging EVM machines or electronic cars like you do electronic cell phones by putting them on a charging base. And then also now think about Mad Energy and what they're doing within this model, even makes it crazier and easier. But if you're doing all of these things, you would essentially make a super city because the EVM cars that are be charged for free would also be tracking packages like VeChain or all the rest of that type of stuff. They would be doing the telemetry data to understand where traffic is, where throughput is, because they're sitting on high range internet and being used and affected by that and providing that market data. So when you're going down the road and you look at a Lamar bulletin board and it says, does marketing work? Just did. That marketing could be changed based on augmented reality, virtual reality, and headsets. Different cars could have different ads being displayed to their UI of the HUD because they know where the car is, so they can use that telemetry. But if you think about what that would do, that would gentrify all the kids that you're actually looking to save, because it would push them out, because Apple, Google, Facebook would want to come to this new super city. Well, what you do is you mint an NFT for every person that exists at the beginning of Flintopia. And remember, just like my analogy of a house, that two people can be NFTs like a partner in a room. If they have a kid, that subcontract NFT is also entitled to the yield that the city puts forward. And then that city technically would become an ish type DAO that would have its own oracles that would benefit and give to the people of that city. And if you sell your house, move out, which we could tell through interoperability, you essentially burn that NFT. And that NFT doesn't get created because now they're building a healthy structure because people with wealth came into that city. And then, like when I was talking with Rags about this idea a few weeks ago, what happens if it's more another city starts to do the same thing? Now we have capitalistic competitiveness in between these two super cities that allow them to be like, well, we make more yield for our city. So it's actually not technically socialism, it's capitalism for the poor and capitalism for all. But it's all done decentrally through open means of oracles and DAOs. So the greed doesn't get there. And that greed is what takes so much of the money, right? When a CEO gets paid 10,000 times more than its employees, you take out that CEO's pay scale and you give it to the people.
So,
just a couple simple steps.
Yeah.
No, like I said, I love this idea. Go ahead, Tony.
No, well, so I mean, let's take, for example, let's push the envelope here, because you were talking about Flint, right? So let's talk about how we build our cities in the future, right?
Right. Well, exactly.
So
we can fix cities and then set the precedents in the future. For example, Puerto Rico has an infrastructure problem. If there's a whole bunch of crypto people going to Puerto Rico, I highly advise that we should probably look at that to set the stage on other places, as well as looking at, third world countries. I hate the term, but if El Salvador and all the rest of that is really trying to make Bitcoin legal tender and use the future of currency interoperability and basically walking away from the giant fiat dragons, they're using the US to basically bully pulpit El Salvador right now. So if people, or if that country starts to use this methodology to basically not only circumvent the dollar, but the old banking infrastructure, and uses it to build green energy, green biotech, and things for its people, it'll only be a few generations till it'll be the mecca of places that people want to go to build, to learn, to research, to go for education.
So, and as we build a community, because it sounds like with all the metaverse going down and all of this virtual now going down, so it's now all about networks, right? So network of people, network of community, your city's a network, your road system's a network, your health care is a network. So as we push down the road in the future, what is that going to look like? So are we going to have, I don't know, tokens? Like every Fortune 500 company is going to have a token. I'm pretty sure, right? Because that's a big network.
I mean, essentially, at the end of the day, they would just convert their legacy stock into a token. So you wouldn't buy a stock, or a stock would be a token at the same rate.
So I think you're assuming Gary Gensler is going to give up his jurisdiction, and the SEC, who currently controls all this, along with the CFTC that controls commodities.
I don't think
there's government agencies that already want them. Like, they've already got their greedy hands around these industries.
But I don't think it's, well, that's way down the road. But I don't think the legacy is not going to let go of their power. So what they're going to want to do.
Same reason why Facebook and Libra, it was the biggest non-bank that was global, right? And that's what their problem was.
The most users potential, yeah. That's why El Salvador, by the way, you mentioned. Mm-hmm. The reason they're getting not sanctioned, but they're getting warnings from the IMF. But previous to Bitcoin, El Salvador used the dollar. They were using the United States, Federal Reserve note. and they loved it. You know, the Fed loved it, right? The United States loves that. Great. When you do that, we like it. When you deviate from that and you shun the dollar and now you want Bitcoin, well, the Federal Reserve don't like that. And the dollar is backed by the American military. So they're going to get sanctioned. They're going to get screwed. And the United States is going to start fucking them up now.
Even embargoed, too.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's the same thing what happened like Cuba and Venezuela, right? With Petro.
Right.
Well, you've seen the language that's come out this week from Biden himself. They're talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies being a matter of national security.
Because it threatens.
So here comes the fear factor.
Right.
They're pushing it. Now, this is the other thing. A couple things I've been talking about for the past couple of weeks. You've got the United States government. You've got Gary Gensler, SEC, all that. They're basically saying, come to the table, okay? Wash all your sins away. Come to the table. Cooperate with us, or else they use the term. We're going to use enforcement tactics. Okay, so that's basically targeting the people at the top. The problem is, and there's still no answer for this. You can't freaking stop a decentralized exchange unless you cut off the entry points or if you cut off the exit points.
Didn't Mao have something like that, like 1 million blooming flowers? What was that back in the day with China? Where he said, hey, all you free thinkers and all you artists and all you liberty loving people, come to the government and we will love you and help you. And then they killed them all.
The Cultural Revolution.
Right. Well, yeah, the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah.
They just showed, the U.S. government just showed their hand yesterday. And here's how they did it. They just approved BSTX. It was SEC approval for blockchain-powered securities exchange, the first one ever, and that slid under the radar. So what are they doing? They're going to push the fear out there. They're going to try to scare everybody. They're going to say, "Come to the table, register yourself as a security, and you can trade on this exchange that's SEC backed." So that's their tactic. No, I don't agree with it or whatever, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also because they only have the term security is the only thing that they have in their rule book. And it's crazy because, the Howey test is what, in the 70s. We didn't even have technology in the form of a mediocre computer, more or less what we have in a cell phone. And then moving forward to decentralized autonomous connections of everything. And so you can choose the legacy side that they don't even want to update the terminology. Also, the people running the damn rules couldn't even operate anything, right? They have assistants that can even read their papers for them. And so they just take fistful of money. I think in the long term, when what like Discourse SendKit is doing is like eventually bring lobbyists to K Street, that's when we really start to do some damage because we bring the fight back to them. And just like, what we get now by having a Daytona 500 car, which is ludicrous to me, but it gets the validity and the questions going on multiple different things. So now that, let's just say, we have a car that won the Daytona 500, and now we go to a senator and lobby them, be like, remember us? We crowdfunded a car. We didn't even need the man Richard himself to help us. We did this as a community. What if we go fund your competitor? We just bought a car that won the Fortune 5 or the Daytona 500. Do you really want us to go fund your competitor, or do you want to come to talk to us? Because we can and we will. And I think that's even taking that mythos and putting that under an idea of a DAO, of a unified front of hexagons that put money into an idea that we crowdfund, and then from there that DAO and goes decentrally, builds ads, builds structure, builds things that eventually K Street lobbyists and senators, they either have to get on board with us or we fund their competition and the people who do get on board with us. I think that's also a method of attack that they can't ignore because of the decentralized aspect of it.
Right, because I mean, something like Hex right now, even if Richard Hart decided tomorrow he wanted to stop Hex, he couldn't. It's just going to run on its own. It's just math without a consciousness just running, right?
it's a Pandora's box. The box has already been opened; it cannot be closed, right? And there's already people that know how to make the front ends for it. You just have to get in there and access it, and it'll live on forever. And that's it.
Same with Uniswap.
You can't legislate math, right? With Uniswap and these other things that are just going to run regardless of people's feelings and opinions and desire to control them, right? But you can control the stuff around them, right? That's why you see them going after the exchanges. That's why you see them going after the KYC and claiming that, you know, all this crypto is being used for all these horrible things, ransomware and blah, 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 when, you know, it's obviously not. But they so on one side of their mouth, they're talking about how evil and how it needs to be controlled. On the other side, they're scooping up and buying everything they can get their little greedy hands on for when they legislate and try to, you know, pick the winners, right?
It's almost pointless to even point out what they're doing. It's because, like, okay, we know what they're doing. They're playing a different game than we are. They're playing the game of power. In the game of power, you have to lie. You have to push a narrative. Then you have to get all your sheeple underneath you to galvanize together and start pushing that narrative. And you can get those people to attack your competitor. It's politics. That's what's happening right now.
And power is based in scarcity, right? Power says there's only so much to go around, so I need to control what's there. Where we're operating from a mindset of abundance, saying there's no limit to the amount of energy, and that's what a network's based on, right? Is abundance.
Yeah, and look what they did. This is also something that happened this week that most people don't know about. They the founder of Uniswap, his Chase account got shadow banned.
Saw
that for his banking.
Yep.
Right. So I think it's sad for him. It's frustrating. I like his tweet. He said, "Congratulations, you've now made this personal." I love that.
Yeah.
That's what I like right there. It's like,
but here's the thing that proved to me that there's no real teeth behind their threats, because if all they can do is attack the founder of a decentralized exchange, and you know the way it works is in between the government and these banks, they're basically I forgot what they called it, liaisons, we'll call it, right?
Yeah.
If there's some type of legal action that's about to be brought down upon somebody that's banking with an institution, these liaisons will be like, hey, you might not want to have an account with this guy anymore. And then they don't have to give a reason why legally. They're not obligated to, and they just cut his bank account off just like that. Same thing happened, I think, to Kraken. I believe they just stopped paying all their people one day because the bank just stopped divvying out checks. They got a notice 3 days after the money stopped in the mail via letter. That's the only thing they can do. But attacking that founder does nothing. What does that do?
Okay, I mean, it's really basically the Kim.com problem, right? Remember, they literally had to go invade Australia or New Zealand or whatever it is, guns blazing, just to try to take out Mega Upload. And at Rags, you had a great thing on Warren. I used to be a big Warren fan because I was a delegate for Bernie in 2016. But the fact that they're like decentralized exchanges fund terrorism, be like dollars fund terrorism.
Right. That's
you know what I mean.
Way more. Money laundering and running are done in U.S. Federal Reserve notes.
Yes. Furthermore, money laundering human trafficking by the banks that they bailed out. That they still are bailing out.
Dude, it's disgusting. The Federal Reserve is the biggest manipulator of the markets in the history of mankind. They have to go.
It's the Ponzi.
That's crazy because like
that's the Ponzi. Yeah.
You learn how they print so much inflation to meet this imaginary demand of an economy. What do they have to do to slow the inflation down? They have to raise rates, and they literally rug pull the United States economy and everybody underneath it, just so inflation decreases. Jobs decrease and everything, but it's okay because we're not going to have stagflation. We're not going to have massive amounts of inflation, right? That's how the Federal Reserve System is broken and shattered into pieces. And they're over here looking at crypto. They want to get a piece of the pie, and they probably want to get attention off of their freaking broken system. It's disgusting.
You know the meme of the guy that's like looking behind the tree, like licking his lips? You know, that is the government looking at all this wealth and economic energy that's going into crypto and technology right now. They're like, licking their lips and like, I want some of that.
They want to make that stable coin, US dollars back stable coin. You're going to see them attack USDC. You're going to see them attack USDT, DAI, all those. And then they're going to try to replace those with the US dollar back stable coin because they know that 80% of the transactions on any of these decentralized exchanges are stable coins. So they want a piece of that
Yeah,
pie.
but-
I think that's how they're
I'll
going
differ
to.
with that one. I beg to differ.
Yeah,
Isn't
go ahead.
Coinbase in bed with the government pretty well though? The USDC I think has already been chosen as the winner. I don't know. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so US dollar tether, USDT, fucking
Mhm.
scam. That's a Ponzi. Like
Right.
that. There's nothing backing it. Those guys are criminals. Bitfinex, trash. Circle, US dollar coin. That's them. They're blessed. They're backed by JP Morgan. They're in. That's the one.
They're anointed.
Coinbase.com has already got their Bitcoin license. They're already listed on the stock exchange. I
On
forget
the
if
stock
it's
exchange, yes.
Yeah, like they're already an IPO. So Coinbase is a permanent fiat on ramp because Jamie
Well-
Dimon and JP Morgan, they're making money with that. So that's our way out into crypto land. And we can go to
Well, if you
Ethereum,
look,
and then we go to Uniswap, and then we go to Pulse Chain, and we can get out. But so we're cool. It's okay.
Well,
It's all
Gindler
fun.
said that but he did say that even Coinbase hasn't come to the table yet with the SEC, and he
The
says,
SEC threatened
look
them.
how many tokenized securities he calls them. He calls every token of a coin basically security at this point. He says Coinbase is buying and selling securities right now, and they haven't come to the table.
That's because
Now-
they threatened him. They're
They're going to get
Brian
bullied.
Armstrong
Yeah,
a letter.
that's what it is.
Yeah, they're bullying him. You're absolutely right. They're bullying him. Brian Armstrong's sticking up for himself and be like, no, fuck you against him.
if you see the playbook that they have from how even in the internet, once it first came out back in the 90s, what they are doing and the government is doing is the portals. They're going to control the portals. The portals are the exchanges. That's what they're going to control. So just like Google and that big portal for the internet, that's in their back pocket. They're going to do the same thing with exchanges. They don't have to go after the small guy because they don't have to.
Yeah,
Because how do you what's the use of getting all these $1 billion of value in the virtual world when you can't use it in the real world because your government is saying that it's the wrong thing and blah blah and it's wrong or doesn't let you buy into the US dollar. Now what we need to do as a community is make sure that we have our own community of peer-to-peer, that we trust each other enough to make do goods and services together, right? And that's why I'm gonna show. That's why I'm doing why Freedom TV is doing PulseCon, because Pulse is the new network, right? For our community, not for the government, right? And so it's Hexicans, not only Hexicans, but there's also other tribes that think our way, right? Which is, the Shiba Inu tribe. You have that's gonna be on the Pulse chain. You're gonna have other tokens that are gonna be on the Pulse chain, and Richard Hart has nothing to do with that, right? I mean, he did it indirectly. He copied the whole system state of ERC20 tokens, right? So they're going to go automatically on the Pulse network. So that's why we have to learn. We have to come together. If we want to fight this whole government and lobby ourselves, we have to come together as a community.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Now,
I
Pulse
totally
Chain
agree.
itself is basically just like an interstate on a highway. Pulse X is essentially the off ramp and the on ramp to the interstate and the highway. People can choose whatever car they drive down that highway. You want to drive a Tesla, you want to drive a Ford, you want to drive a Camry, you want to drive a semi-truck. They all have different utilities based on the interoperability that you're using. And I think, again, moving forward, if we look at legacy finance that we know is crumbling, they will blockbuster themselves and get left behind. And they are desperately trying to fight against China having the digital yuan versus like the Fed is imploding against itself, plus trying to battle other countries that are stepping out of line. They know that they're going to be losing this war. And they know that this war is just going to keep moving faster and faster if you just look at history. Like they are stuck married to oil, essentially, and oil and war.
The petrodollar.
To fund the war machine that allows you to point a gun at people and invade. Once green energy becomes sexy and profitable, you dethrone the petro, which is the linchpin of the dollar, which is the linchpin of the military machine. There are other ways for them to kneecap themselves, and as we organize as decentralized people, both as global forward thinkers of crypto, and as users of these new interoperability and opportunities, that we get ahead of the curve and we allow ourselves to build something that can be traded, used, and benefit all without the middleman. And the middleman is the government at this point.
We've got it. We're doing good. I think our collective minds are shifting to that vertical integration. Okay, we have everything in the same ecosystem. It's here's the chess match right now. We got to think about 3 or 4 moves ahead. And when the IMF looks at El Salvador, and El Salvador is basically DCAing into Bitcoin right now. Once El Salvador gets to a point where they're like, F you guys, we don't need you anymore, they build their own fiat off ramp, and then the whole world gets sucked into El Salvador, because ultimately that's the only control that they have. When nation states really adopt crypto and they cut out everybody else and they build those off ramps, you will see an explosion of capitalistic energy that you've never seen ever before. Now, on the flip side, there's a lot of implications about freedom and liberty here. A lot of implications with NFTs, etc. You look at El Salvador, they've divvied out these wallets to all their citizens, but all those wallets have a social security number on them. Like, they know who's who. And that's a big problem too. So it's going to also depend which of these nation states are actually going to do this in a way that is decentralized, in the spirit of what's actually happening.
Right.
Yeah.
It can go both ways. But let's just say if someone had educated El Salvador better, that instead of buying Bitcoin, they bought Hex, staked it, wrapped their Hex and their T shares, and then made a fiat currency that's based on their wrapped Hex stakes. That's how you beat many, many, many sides of the dragon.
Right. Well, going back to people that use gold and tried to say goodbye to the IMF, like the last 5 leaders and countries that did that got a heaping dose of freedom, and their leaders went away. So it'll be interesting to see if we can do it electronically instead of with gold, right?
Right.
And I want to give a shout out to Alex in the chat here. He says, have you guys ever read Circle's terms of service in regards to the USDC? Like, what are you agreeing to when you use USDC? Yeah. It says it's a good read. And then a shout out to Crypto Heartbeat in the chat saying, what's up? So thanks guys for joining us.
I've actually never read those terms of service, and I do use US dollar coin, so I should check that out actually.
It's a pretty good read. It is. I think they do say, hey, listen, we've got a certain percentage that's actually backed by cash, but then the rest is backed by assets. So whatever that may be.
I think that's the same thing that Tether has also, because it's fractionalized.
I thought the last report for Circle, they actually just went to pure cash because people were pissed about that asset shit, because they had bonds and all kinds of securities and other shit on there. So I'm pretty sure Circle cleared out. But Tether, no, they have never done an audit ever, correct, bro. Tether is backed by fucking nothing. It is just like the dollar. I mean, it's it's backed by nothing, But be wary. One day Tether will collapse, and if you're holding Tether, it's going to zero. So
I think we've got enough different stables now that it wasn't as bad as 17, where Tether was the only stable. And so, like, if the Pandora's box of Tether unraveled, that would have been nasty. But now we've got enough stables across to even out that load, especially just looking at the dynamics and the real game theory of what Rich is doing with Pulse, right? He has a huge war chest of stables on the Ethereum side. The MakerBot is basically going in and scraping all of the air quote fractionalized worthless USDC, and they can just plunge that on V2 on either side, and it's asymmetrical across either way. So it actually makes a real stable across the bridge. And that's why he's always said if USDC wants to invalidate that, they could get sued. He said that every time as a warning. But should he not want to, he can unplug the Ethereum USDC that's validated as a a valid stable coin and then just wrap that in basically like a DAI or something else. I mean, it's the same thing Liquid Loans is essentially doing with a algorithmic stable coin based on an asset class, based on a use case of multiple levels of utility. We just use the system that they put in place first to do it better and for a more decentralized, fair vote across the board, and we win.
Yeah, I love it. I want to get back to one of these questions back that we didn't get to. How would you calculate the value of, let's say, a 10-year stake for $10,000 with 9 years left on it?
You could use hexcalc.net. I prefer stakehex.today. There's many other hex staking calculators. You just basically want to pick your terms of what you think the price will do. And ideally, when I do any of my predictions, I take what I think the number is, divide that into a third, take that third, divide it into a half, which gives me a pretty good gut check of what it should be.
Right. And then also you want to consider also Paladin, YYZ, at what price did you bought the hex in the first place to stake it? And then also your end value, you feel that it's going to happen at the end of the 10 years. So
a 10-year stake is so hard to even fathom because Bitcoin is only 12 years old. Yeah. And that was, it's like calculating the time in between fax machines to cell phones and how quickly shit went from there. And we're not even talking cell phones with internet on it. We're just talking cell phones.
Right.
Yeah, because you have that exponential curve that we have with compounding interest. You know, my buddy was showing me his stake. His stake is 96% done. He's about to go out, and every day the penalty only goes down a few $1,000s, even though he's right there at the end. And it's got the big payday bonus on it too, right? But he's within rock throwing distance of ending this stake, and the penalty is still insane for just the very end of it when that compounding hits, when those bonuses hit. So yeah, it is hard to value something like that for sure.
And make sure that he mints his Hedron before, or claims his Hedron at least before he ends that stake.
And I guess Hedron pushed back their 10x bonus from January 31st to February 27th. So they're waiting for the end of the PulseX sacrifice to do their 10x bonus, where you can go in, sign a signature, pay an Ethereum fee, and then not only do you got a 10x bonus on your stakes, you get the copy on Pulse Chain too, right?
I believe
so that's just going to be some insane amount of Hedron hitting the market.
And that's what I love about the Hexagon Inside Ideals. Now we're building ideals of what we've been taught as a community and team through Richard and through ourselves. And now we're developing more products, more utility, and more things to help spread that type of message, right? And it makes, the more that we do those kind of things, the more we become decentralized ourselves outside of our own ecosystems and channels and echo chambers, which allows the message to spread outside of just us, right? So then more people start to think this way, operate this way, and handle things this way. And it makes it even harder to kill the dragon as this virality essentially spreads.
So I just to go back to Paladin's comment about
going to El Salvador.
El Salvador. Actually, me and Hexray Vision, we're seeing the ambassador to El Salvador in Miami on April 1st and 2nd at the World Crypto Conference in Miami, and we are sitting down with him. So they do want to talk about their future.
I think it's fantastic because once you get countries to actually do this, it's just as crazy as Hexagons 1 year ago saying that we're going to sponsor a Daytona car with no help from Richard. None. It's just us. But as we start doing that, once we get countries involved, it opens the Pandora's box even further away, because why wouldn't El Salvador want to have a decentralized way to interact around the thumb of the U.S. war machine? Because that's what it is. The U.S. war machine just basically invades things and takes what it wants and ruins things and then whines about it. that that it's just kind of ludicrous in my mind.
I think it would be. Go David.
I just want to say real quick is like they're all like El Salvador volcano energy. Yeah, we'll use volcano energy to mine Bitcoin. Like it's like, yeah, Hex is even greener than that, bro. You don't need any equipment at all. Like that.
Yeah.
But volcano energy, if you listen to what's been going on with MAD, those hot rocks are powerful, right? Remember Tesla's stuff that he was trying to build basically got their thumb put over. Same thing with water cars in the 60s. Giant entities want to hold to their power, and so what they'll do is they'll do anything to kneecap the competition, especially if it's going to show something that's more beneficial to generations and make that green energy, green biotech sexy and profitable. Once that happens, the death throw will be crazy, and people will be like, oh, it's kind of like Texas freezing when they had their pipelines frozen, and they're the energy pipeline guys. What, you didn't want to put money into heating your pipeline? Like you're the ones with the energy,
right?
It's usually always hot.
Well, I mean, when you screw up the global thermostat by burning petrol fuels, you can't bitch that your shit made it cold.
So let me ask you guys this. Let's talk about this. So you're able to sit down with the ambassador to El Salvador, and the word Hex will probably come out of your mouth, and you'll probably talk to him about it, right? If you're a nation state, if you're somebody that has that type of power, what type of vulnerabilities would you see in Hex? What would keep you away from that? What would be the conversation that you need to have before you get to that person to figure out how to overcome those objections?
Well, so Hex is a store of value, right? So one of the things that they can do is, I mean, that's why they chose Bitcoin in the first place, because they thought is the best store of value. When you're talking about a centralized bank, even if it's their own treasury, right? They have to have a store of reserves, right? And how the world works, unfortunately, right now is the dollar is unfortunately the world currency right now. And so they've been screwed time and time and time again by the Federal Reserve about their own currency, and that's why they went to the dollar in the first place. Then now that they see a whole new way of being more sovereign and more sovereign country, that's why they picked Bitcoin. Now, what I'm going to tell them is like, look, Bitcoin, that network, because really that's why it has value, because that network has value. And so if you, in the future, if you can get in a small, just like me and you, right? We got in at a smaller value, we can get more stakes and more T-shares, right? And those T-shares go on for the long haul, especially a country, because they're going to think about 200 years, 300 years down the road, right? For their own country. So as a store of value, and you have dividends. When I say dividends, what I mean by that is through the T-share, you get dividends because if anybody unstakes early, and most likely a country won't unstake, they don't have to unstake early. So, and if you have different mechanisms to have more value in their country, and then that means they can have more infrastructure, that means they can have more education, that means more, what Crypto Kool-Aid was saying, you have this big, huge boom of capital. When I say capital, in resources, so there's value in human resource, you have value in commodity resource, and think of a small country like El Salvador. It has resources, it's just that it's been pillaged every single year.
Yeah, and you can even have that a little bit further. So if you go back to my old analogy, that Hex, all right, so to live in this world, you need to pay rent, right? You have to pay rent to exist. Now, you could take rent and you could buy a house to get equity, but I still had to have the money to buy that house to have the equity. Now, you could earn interest, not yield, but interest. And to earn interest, I need to buy a house and rent it to someone else. But then I still have my problem number A, my first use case, that I have to live to exist. So I have to pay rent or go somewhere to have a house. Now, if you look at Hex as a concurrent whole, it's a house that prints houses, that prints houses, that prints houses. Each of those problems are satiated. You can be the renter, the rentee, and the person that holds and earns yield, not just interest. So El Salvador, for example, could take the staunch of their Bitcoin, buy a bunch of Hex on Pulse Chain, run that through essentially a rolling staking ladder, and do what I was basically talking about with like the super DAOs or all the rest of that I've hinted before, and take that money and put it directly under spot. So it creates a buy wall that sell pressure can't get through. And so it will generate some currency, especially if it has its own stable or something that it can wrap or buy, borrow, and encapsulate with that yield asset class. Because usually currencies have to be based in something, whether that's commodity, equity, or utility, right? And so like even the country of El Salvador using as a rolling staking ladder, again, shout out to Ro, he'll be teaching you later this afternoon. But you can have it where it becomes a mini little OA that allows it to make sure that the money is taken off. And then let's just say people sell into El Salvador, right? What are they going to do? Are they going to dump that stuff that they just got? No, they're going to take those funds and buy it and stake it out again another 15 years. So it becomes a knight or an actor that defends the currency while getting the benefit of the yield, especially generations down the line. Because let's be realistic, South America or any countries that have been usurped by, let's just say, Great Britain or East India Company or the United States or anything like that, or China, or anywhere where the superpowers usurp the little guy, they have the opportunity now to put their chips in somewhere that within 10, 20, 30, 40 years, the power dynamics have vastly changed. Look at where we were 40 years ago as a global internet or as technology. Nowhere to where we were now. Nowhere, not even close.
Well said.
Well, and then on top of that, if you use the mechanism of Hedron as we were talking about as a bond market, so then the same stakes that a country does, right? They can use the Hedron as a mechanism as a bond, and so that would be to trade on the open market even in legacy side, just like a U.S. Treasury bill.
That's
right?
it. Just like look at T-bonds, so like Wales talks about, right? It's the same exact things as a T-bond, except instead of being debased by the Federal Reserve and the money printers, this goes up and to the right programmatically without little gnomes at top that pull the strings.
Yep. And you could, like a country like the United States, you could even fix the United States by outlawing the Federal Reserve and abolishing and banishing them. You give the U.S. Treasury the right to print money, but not borrow it, right? And let's say you're using Hex, like the Treasury can take their Hex, they can make their ladders, they could just do 555s, and then you could wrap it in Hedron, and then you can print Hedron like a bond, and that could be the bond market. And when the government or the Treasury needs cash, they can just sell Hedron, and they wouldn't even have to touch their Hex. That's how it works. That's kind of what we're building in simulation here on the blockchain. We're ahead of them by decades.
It's not only ahead of them by decades, it's not corruptible like all of they are. And that's really the inherent difference is
well said.
When people say, Hex is immutable, well, what it really means is it's not corruptible. That's the second tier of the game theory going up, because immutable means that you can't alter the law for me, we, or anyone. Richard can't play a different game for himself, even because he wrote it, because it's immutable. And so when you have immutable finances that still even operates the same way a T-bond does, the U.S. could actually fix up its own shit. And then from there, we could look at, people view socialism as such a bad word, but really it's just capitalism for all, right? And taking care of the big and the small. Because if we have capitalistic and socialistic ideals that everyone can get a piece of the table, then everyone can learn, grow, and actually be a functioning member of society, which is not what we have in America or any other parts of the world that get debased by capitalistic or crony capitalistic is the term.
Central banking.
Ideals. Yeah.
Central banking is what corrupts capitalism. Like that's
Correct.
the disease.
Yes,
You got to
correct.
cut out central banking, and then capitalism will flourish.
Yeah, and at most, what you really want is small businesses to flourish, and that's you really want free enterprise system where you're free to make goods and services as you for yourself and for your community.
Your economic
license.
The problem is our economic system currently is not predictable. It's very subjective. You've got the Federal Reserve System. You've got what 12 or 16 board members. They're voted in every 14 years by a sitting president, political party, and there's no playbook, no strategy that they use in times of crisis or in times of prosperity. It's just, hey, what's this guy think we should do this time? Let's put a vote on it. That's trash. There needs to be a constitution to our economic system. And that's kind of what cryptocurrency is providing in a major, major way. And once we make the economy predictable, then you remove a lot of roadblocks. Now, let me pose this question to you guys too. And this is an OA question. For a country to invest in hex at that level, like maybe 30% of their treasury goes into hex, we convince them to do it. How, as a country, how can they overcome in their heads how much the OA, whoever that is, whatever entity that is, controls? How do you overcome that?
Sure. So let's just say, for example, we use my rolling Dow idea that this country itself takes a 30% staunch of its GDP and puts down to a rolling staking ladder, and it becomes the floor by taking, let's just say, every month or every 6 months, whatever it wants to do, it takes half of those profits that it would have gotten and it restakes that out 15 years. So now not only is it taking the yield that it's doing, pushing it out for more intrinsic value for a later date, the half that it would have gotten, it does not put as a market sell order. It puts it as a limit order for the floor. So if other whales and other entities sell into it, then it gets the capital. What it can do with that capital is what it wants, right? It already is programmatically taking half of what it would get every month and relocking that up, both intrinsically locking up the yield, but it also is a good actor in how it releases its capital. Maybe it doesn't want to sell all that 50%. Maybe it wants to do a wide variety. But as it does these multiple different things, it creates multiple different floors of buy pressure that no one can build through. And once it gets a rolling ladder of that, it unstakes the last one, sticks it back in the top. So that way it's actually a rolling glass ceiling to push the capital up. Now, the OA itself doesn't do any of that. It doesn't do anything. It's not even playing that game to push the price up. It just holds in proxy everything else. Like you would assume, let's just say that company has a bunch of petrol or gold or all the rest of that. It doesn't need to dig up all the assets to know that it has it. It doesn't have to pull that trigger unless it doesn't want to. And if it doesn't need to, why would it go frack the ground to go pull all the gold out if it doesn't even need the gold? If it just used the equity of having the gold as good enough to do what it needs to do.
Yeah, I guess it's a little, in my mind, it's a little bit different at that level. Sure. Like we talk about the parade of imaginary horribles, whatever the case may be. But at that level, when you're playing with economies, etc., hex ultimately becomes the enemy of other countries because that's the primary currency of potentially, El Salvador, we'll take for example. So if you're in charge of that country, you're thinking, well, if there is a group or entity that is in charge of that address, can they be corrupted by foreign actors? And this is not a crazy question to pose because it happens all the time.
It's not a crazy question at all, but go ahead, T-Money.
So you're talking about hex being the country's currency. I wouldn't have hex as the currency. It would have
that's
its
what I'm
own.
talking about. Yeah.
Well, so just like the United States does, you have the special reserve deposits, right? That's what's kind of pushing a lot of what's
So it's an
in
asset
between the
class that's
banks.
backing what they have existing. That's what you're saying.
That is correct. So
Okay, gotcha.
now they can now because they hold an asset that's appreciating in their central bank, in this government central bank. Now you can print or issue your own US, like their own government backed currency. So they can now have a El Salvador peso, but it's backed by hex.
That makes sense.
Do you get
That's
it?
good. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they
even
can,
back it in multiple
they're more
different
their own
ways.
sovereign because of it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can create their
And
own
they can actually,
own OA on their own token pegged to
Yes.
hex.
Correct.
right.
That's
And
exactly right.
on top of that, if they need to, for any future projects that they need to do, and they need to create a mechanism where they have to borrow, they can borrow on through Hedron, through the, like, creating a bond on their hex. So which is
I like it.
awesome. Yeah.
So that's gonna be your
global. It's global onboarding. The only problem is like everyone said, once that happens, us Hexicans are going to be targets in America and all the rest of that type of stuff. But we got to swallow the fact that I'll be okay with being a target, and if I have to, I'll fucking move. But the thing is that once we actually start this avalanche to undo the Fed, which is ideally what we all want, we want the people to understand that the lies that they've been told is not in the people's best interest, right? It's never going to be till they learn that they need to play by the rules of all instead of the rules of the few, because they've already debased all of us enough. What, 6% interest, 6.2% interest a month inflation after $100 now only is what? $6.70 after 60 years? You can't play this game anymore. It's the future of internet money on the internet, and the future of the internet is augmented reality, virtual reality, and a mixed reality, like between the two. And that'll happen in the next 10 years. I mean, I'll guarantee it's going to happen in the next 10 years. If it happened in the next 4.
Darren asked a great question. Can Hex fork Hex 2.0? So can each country fork their own version of Hex? I don't know if they can, because it's viewable, but it is copyrighted, right? It's viewable, but it's copyrighted. So, see, Blue Bum jumped right back on that there. And I want to say thanks very much for everyone that's been hitting the likes. I really appreciate that. Earlier, we had Valiant Brand in the chat. I want to congratulate him on the milestone he just passed. I had no idea he was going live at the same time. There's like, anymore you can't really like find a slot where no other Hexicans going live. So I appreciate all the people here. I appreciate the likes, the subscribes, and the interaction. Thanks for all the awesome chat going on. We had Alex Hedron hanging out here. We got Crypto Heartbeat. It's a great place to be. So thank you very much for the likes and all this information. Now, while I've got all this juicy brain power on this stream, I have a question. Can we use NFTs and DAOs to fix the Oracle problem? Because like you guys were saying earlier, every time that blockchain touches the physical world, it turns to crap, right?
That's
because you run into corrupt human beings who have to actually input information into oracles, right? And so earlier you were mentioning some ways that you could possibly get a better feel or hold them more accountable and get more actual information on the blockchain. Do you guys have any idea how that might come about in the near future?
Just for the crowd real quick, let's talk about what an oracle is. And let's talk about what a DAO is.
Sure. So an oracle, just think about it like Eye of Sauron, a lighthouse on the edge of the water, a oracle in the sense of the Greek times where you would go and pay tithe and they look into the future. they're watchers on the wall. If you do like the Game of Thrones thing, they are the Black Watch, right? So their job is to watch and calculate and write down. Well, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, and it can do whatever the hell it's programmed to do, but it has rules and regulations just like any other game or contract, but it doesn't care about your feelings. It's going to say A plus B equals C. If C needs to go into, it's just math. It's just math in a smart contract. So an oracle is going to look at everything as a whole, and then it's going to give that information and push it into a DAO. And multiple DAOs can have multiple rules and regulations in how they interact, whether that's through a particular currency, whether it's through a share and trade of ideas, whether that's through anything. A DAO is essentially a hive mind of smart contracts that somebody put forth into the wild and said, off you go.
Okay,
Now,
now Crypto, let me
tokens-
pause you real quick, brother. Let me pause you.
Sure.
Answer this question real quick. Give the audience an example of, like, a real life example of what an oracle would do and why it would be feeding information. Give just an illustration that way.
Sure. So a real world example, again, let's go back with lighthouses, right? Back in the day, before we had GPS, satellites, and all the rest of that, you saw a lighthouse. A lighthouse shone its light across that you could see the rocks and you knew what was coming. So you on the lighthouse, because you got to see the warmth of the light going on, you would know where ships were, right? So if you had a problem or someone put out a flare, a fire, an accident, the lighthouse inherently of itself could shine the light on where it needs to be looking. But as a whole, it's looking everywhere and it's alerting people to where the danger is. Is that easy enough?
Yeah,
Or
so
do you have a
basically it looks at data outside of a system, it gathers that data and it ejects that data into the system. That's essentially what an oracle does, correct?
Yes, many ways, but yes.
Temperature, like race horses, like
That's-
all sorts of stuff.
When you were
All of
talking about the lighthouse, that's really interesting because when we were down in Key West, where I got this pretty hat, they would actually move the lighthouse to get the ships wrecked. So not only would they move the lighthouse to have people run aground and take their stuff, but there was also an island that was named Mule Key or Donkey Key, and they would strap lanterns on the necks of the donkeys and have them out there in the mud, out in the Florida Keys, so that ships thought that these donkeys were a lighthouse, and they would start going off space so that people could just take all the shit from the ships, right? And so just like an oracle, if you're getting bad data from
Correct.
going into the DAO from the oracle, you're gonna get wrecked, literally.
If you're like a
Bingo.
gambling smart contract, you need
Well,
a way to verify who won. Okay, so I guess an oracle would be a way to harvest that information to put into the smart contract to see who gets paid out.
And
If
also,
your
if you
game
take,
is
like,
not a
field
smart
farming
contract
and-
itself.
Correct.
Well, yeah, but if you talk about slashing, David, which you can talk about more, like on most LP farming and all the rest of that, if you're a bad actor, you get slashed, which we don't get with pulse chain validators, but all the rest of that. But eventually, there's repercussions for being a bad actor, whether a looker or like which an oracle is, or an actor, which can be a validator or DAO or something like that. You can get repercussions for bad data, essentially.
Yeah, but oracles, like, they're not good. If you have to use them for your DeFi project, then that's not ideal. That's bad, because then you have to go outside the blockchain. You got to trust somebody. So let's say you're pulling price feeds from Coinbase. What is the price of Bitcoin? And your oracle checks it every 10 seconds, and then you've got some coin on Pulse Chain that reacts to that price. What happens if somebody hacks your server? What happens if Coinbase fucks up and the data they feed you, which is verified and your oracle accepts it? What if it gets everybody liquidated?
So
what
what
would
I'm
you say the
hearing,
difference between a validator and an oracle would be? Just to
So
explain to everyone.
yeah, so like a validator for like Pulse Chain, there's no oracle. It doesn't leave the blockchain. All we care about is the chain itself. All an oracle does, or Pulse Chain validator, they just take turns and they mine blocks, just like Ethereum miners. That's all they do. An oracle I'm just going to pick on liquid loans as an example, because they're going to use oracles. Liquid loans is going to use oracles that are going to check the price of Pulse on centralized exchanges, aggregate that data, and then feed that into the liquid loans contract to give a value of is a USDL worth $1 of Pulse. So that's how that'll work, for example. That's one instance of how an oracle work. So, it works, and like Chainlink exists. Oracles are a thing, but if you can avoid using them in your project, it's usually better.
Well, I think the one thing when you have to think about like oracles as cross-chain utilities, like monitoring your traffic data through your phone is actually taking your cellular data of knowing where you are and being like, hey, everybody stopped right there, so clearly there's a traffic jam. That really didn't have anything to do with Google Maps, but it did because it's using the telemetry data of your cell phone. It's like when they bought Waze or Waze, and they knew where the cop application is. That's actually an oracle. Somebody tapping on, be like, there is a speed trap here. I mean, so like,
that's not really an oracle, though. That's just aggregating GPS data from a bunch of phones. That's a little
right.
different.
But let's fast forward it to what we can do with multi-chain networks and multi-chain things, right? From different companies, media.
Yeah, an oracle might be useful for a bridge to check, hey, does this wallet have this much Pulse? And then on the other side, does this wallet have this much ETH? If both are yes, then do something.
Correct.
That might be a useful oracle, sure. So
well, the thing is that they're sitting on the edge of such new technology that's moving so bloody fast that it's like, like I use the analogy where we've used horses our entire time of growing as a civilization, both for transportation, both for class and prestige, both for a marriage dows and giving away. And now the only thing we use horses for is refer to our machines or horse powered, right? And so we're now sitting at that precipice that technology is horse powered. And even like what we have now in our cell phones and what we're utilizing, I mean, even the new PS5 doesn't come with a CD-ROM tray, which they used to call a cup holder 20 years ago, right? So like you got to think about how fast we are moving as a whole. And the ideas of watchers are not necessarily a horrible idea. Maybe their implementation is a little off, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's going to get better too. Like liquid loans, for example, let me boast about their oracle technology. They're planning on having oracles, right, where it's going to be like software that people like guys like me, I can run on a server, and it's kind of like a pulse chain validator. I just run the liquid loans oracle software. As long as I don't change it or modify it, there's going to be a whole bunch of network of other people doing them too. And as long as all the oracles agree, then it gets written to the blockchain. And if you have any bad oracles or bad actors, the good ones will find them and filter them out, and they'll get like voted out, basically.
Correct.
So that could work.
So let me see if I can summarize some of this for people that aren't keeping up on all the jargon. Basically, one of the solutions to the oracle problem is that everyone needs to have more skin in the game that they stand to lose. If they give bad data, then they stand to win by whatever's rewarding them for participating as an oracle, right? Kind of like the validators with Pulse Chain. You're going to lose a lot more Pulse if you mess up than you stand to gain by collecting the fees, right? So it's having the pain be worse than the pleasure or the goal of whatever you're trying to screw out of people by delivering bad information. Is that I mean, that's probably oversimplifying it, but I'm trying to get to some way that people might be able to wrap their heads around what oracles are and how we can actually get good oracles.
Correct. Yes, I think it's very, very because the stuff can get insanely complex the more you dig. But the simplest solution, and then comparing it to how you would deal with life, is probably the easiest way to deal with things, right? An LP token in a DEX is just like going to a money changer. When you drop off a plane, you need to exchange your currency. Like, people understand that shit. Yeah, I think
Paladin's question real quick. He's like, couldn't you tokenize the entire country of El Salvador with NFTs? No, Because who's going to go around and like make an NFT for here's a tree, here's a rock, here's a house, here's a dog? Like, no, that's crazy. That like
I think
yeah,
if you
no.
take my Flint analogy for the future, I think is what he's running with, because normal acting people, just like as there's a census in the U.S., you can make the census essentially be an NFT, but the whole country would have to move forward with that, which is the difference between a city, which has a smaller scope than a country, right? And a city, if you go with my Flint model, you're just repairing the plumbing anyways. You could actually utilize it as a for good scenario. So if you took like Mad Energy's little boats that clean the ocean and you had them essentially surround oil dredges, it's the same commonality of Greenpeace chasing whaling rigs with giant water cannons. It's a positive media situation and not a negative media situation, and they could benefit from that. But you just can't wholesale that into the future. Otherwise, it's easily vulnerable, right? Every time a hex dips 85% and then doubles and doubles and doubles, it's like a dragon shedding its skin, or like a hermit crab finding a bigger shell. It's very, very vulnerable in that very small amount of time. But after that happens, anything below that cannot hurt it, right? You know, an orca whale is not scared of a guppy. But at the very beginning, maybe that orca is very vulnerable to some kind of shark when it's very, very young. Mm-hmm. So the growth pattern of those things could happen. It just needs to be communicated and developed. And we, again, are sitting at the age of an epoch, just like the age of Ford making the first car, right? Horse barons, basically, when the first cars were being made, would have a team basically barely move in front of the car, so they were almost unusable. They basically tried to cut the kneecaps off of them because they knew that their time was numbered. And if they made using them unattractive, it's the same issue with green energy or anything else.
So going back to the oracles, I mean, it's kind of like what's happening today in the internet. So you can, like, when there's a conspiracy theory spat out, right? And you're like, okay, and you want to verify certain truths. Do you go to Wikipedia? Do the Google it? Or, you know, do you go on Trump's Twitter and make sure that's the real thing, right? So right. Is that the real, or do I believe QAnon, right? Is that the real deal, right? So is that that's the problem with oracles, right? We don't know.
Yeah, it's shit in, shit out.
Verify, right?
Yeah,
if we verify it, right?
Right.
So
you get in what to get out.
So I'm going to push it even further, you know. So if I do a dick pic of myself and I put it on and people are going to want to know if it's the truth or not, and that's my dick. So, you know, do I believe the Google or Twitter, or do I actually go to Pornhub and, oh yeah, that's the good, that's the
T money right there.
It's just this nice took a turn.
Nice
I took a turn, but you know, it's getting too serious here. So
we're bringing it back Vegas style. We're bringing it back Vegas style.
Oh,
is it 2 inches or is it 2 inches from the ground?
Well, that's the thing. You gotta look into the oracle, see what you're
is
it true? Is it an 8 or 10?
Let's switch from proof of girth to Darren Gradsky's comment here. We're going to go, imagine Hex having a fiat on-ramp for each country's currency, and the country takes the fees, which will be its tax, and then the crypto would be beneficial to the citizens and government. So instead of taxing their citizens and extorting them, you could simply use your fee going on in and out of the exchange as your tax for your country. And the people that want to do business with your country are the countries that people want to do business will gain the most from that system.
Well, that's in the real life, that's called tariff. When you want goods and services and you go from one government to the other and you go import, export, you know, that's the tariff. So that's a tax. Yeah, sure.
Right. I think, like, again, the fact that we have the Rothschilds and all the old money, all the old legacy that doesn't want to give up their power, and they want to limit the power because the dollar is being inflated by what they're doing, so it's worth less. So how do you make that? You make the poor poorer. Eventually, there's no longer any juice to squeeze out of that fruit. If certain countries come together, almost like a NATO, and they form these type of things that actually use capitalism for the poor or socialism for the people. Remember, socialism got a bad rap because it wasn't sustainable, because the oligarchs were still pulling their piece of the pie out. And in general, a universal one for all is always better. It's what capitalism is meant to be about, is healthy competition. But when the competition gets so skewed that it's just meant for the wealthiest voting class, or the wealthiest recipients, it no longer works for the poor. Look at student loans. The second student loans couldn't be bankruptcied. It create the biggest debt that could be traded, which everyone else utilized the same way the housing market utilized subprime mortgages. Why not hand mortgages out to the poor, right? And that couldn't afford it. And then watch that implode. And then who came and bought all the rest of those houses up? Corporations.
True. And you're right. Like when Obama made student debt unclearable by like a bankruptcy, I thought it was Obama. Obama signed that law.
It was before that.
Was it really?
It was before that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I assure you.
I think it was Clinton.
It was Clinton. Dude with $250,000 in student loan debt. I assure you, I've been paying. Actually, I ran the numbers. It's really kind of nuts. So if you take $1,400 a month times 12 times 11 years, that's what I paid in just interest. But then you can debase like the overtime I've had to work, which even gets crazier, and the numbers get absolutely nuts. It's a racket, but we've always had rackets, and this is the racket that they can use to prevent people from getting the education, which we now give for free on YouTube, right? So remember, like before, you had to go to these Ivy League colleges to take part in conversations like Twitter Spaces, into coming on stream and talking to people. There wasn't that commonality of having those kind of things. Now we live in a world where, after the issue of the last 2 years, everyone is connected via a webcam. So do you really have to go into a brick mortar place to be crucibled to death through debt to learn and make a connection with someone that you could talk to on the internet for free?
Not anymore.
Nope. Not anymore. No, sir.
Nope.
There is something to be said, though, unfortunately, about what a degree represents these days. It's almost like a membership.
Yep.
That's the unfortunate part. And you got to pay a lot of money to get that membership, and you're gate kept because of that. So that's the unfortunate part. Unless you're in some type of profession, like, you're a doctor, obviously, if you're some specialization of some sort, doctor, lawyer, whatever.
Well, they get
it's very similar in my industry of being a CG artist. Is 90% about your growth will be based on feedback of people that understand your stuff. That way, like anyone that goes through, what's up?
Your portfolio like is your resume, right?
It is, but also there's higher levels of your pedigree. So, for example, I run Kool-Aid University, which is a very small group of Hexicans that I know well. I will get you all the software tutorials and everything that you need. But if you hire Markable for anything, I'm his art director. He's my boy. I don't have the tactile time to do the work anymore, but what I can do is give immediate feedback and red line notes. And so by having someone that gives you red line notes of feedback that has a little more experience than you, you win across the board. And that's essentially the community you get from bad term, but a boys club or whatever the fuck you want to call Ivy League stupid institutions.
It's a network.
It is. No, it is. It is. And when you make that network for all, now that's good. That's very, very good.
And it's also it's re-education, man. That paper also represents that. And we're not talking
a
about
level of conditioning.
It's conditioning. It's an ideology in some cases, depending on what degree you go through and what field you want to break into. That's what you got to do. And they re-educate you, and it does not take a very long amount of time, especially with the soft mush of some of these young people's brains. It's just molded the way they want. And I hate to say it, but I believe 100% that's what it is.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, look at the kids now playing with RoboBlocks. They're learning how to code just by playing and tooling around with software. Notch made $1 billion for making Minecraft, which is the most ludicrous block game in the world, coming as someone that builds high-end CG, but it was profitable. And now it's set the stage for other people to build very simple sandboxes, right? And those sandboxes are the same thing as Decentraland, all the rest of that. Looking at the future of augmented reality and blended virtual reality. It's the same damn thing. And so look how fast that's come, that no one even knew. I mean, hell, let's go back to Doom. What Feeder was that, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, something like that? Oh, it's almost 30 years ago.
I was gonna say we're talking
Yeah,
early 90s right there, bro.
Well, I've been building computers for 30 years, so it was right around that time. But that was the first of all of it. And now Unreal 5, you've got photoreal fucking characters acting, and all. The Mandalorian is built in Unreal Engine. All of it will be done in Unreal Engine. It's only been 30 years. Think about 30 years of crypto.
Wow.
Wild.
Oh,
wild.
That's wild.
It's gonna be good.
So, boys, I gotta get off. I gotta go. My wife is saying that she's the ultimate oracle about my dick. So, I gotta get off. Thanks, guys, for having a real good discussion here on TikTok.
Hey, give a shout out to your conference real quick and what's going on down there in Vegas.
Absolutely. So we're definitely we're the last day for the guys for the Crypto Spabak. We're receiving them here at the on March 5th. They're going to be out here. So if you want to be here a day early for the Hex conference with Matty All In, just hit us up. We'll let you know where it's at. Go to freedomtv.info for more info. And also, we're going to be co-putting the party on and helping Nagabo with his mansion party. You want to hit him up for tickets for that. And, of course, it here. February 1st, PulseCon 2022, September 6th through the 9th. It's going to be right here in Vegas at the Resort World. And we're going to have great speakers for you and this type of conversations where you learn about your crypto and freedom for the man.
And if we're really lucky, we'll have Pulse Chain to see what floats and what sinks, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity to build the bridges and the people. So, T-Money, always a pleasure. And talk soon.
Yeah. Talk to you soon. Awesome. Do you guys have anything else you guys want to bring up or talk about? Well, since we're in the room, we're pushing about 2 hours now. Obviously, we have a Hexologist and Ballet Brand that we're streaming as well. So for sure, go give those guys a like and a sub and check out their awesome streams. I really appreciate all the work that they put forth in this community. They're awesome. Hexo and Ballet, that can't say anything better than them. And then Wells Only. He's actually postponed his stream because all these other streams were going on. So I really appreciate Wells' courtesy and thoughtfulness. I love his stuff. Big fan of Wells as well. I want to say thank you to obviously T-Money and you guys for showing up. I mean, without you, it's just me reading my poetry, and no one wants to hear me compare myself to a leaf falling in the wind. And so you guys make this stuff happen. You guys bring this exciting, amazing content. The chat's just eating it up, and I look forward to it. I just want to give an open invitation to Kool-Aid to come on every following Sunday. We're doing this. I really appreciate it. I know that this is your one day off where you get to spend a little more time in your hot tub But
the thing is, hot tub is my second job. It's where I do my research and recon, and sometimes I come in on the channels from there. But man,
you were.
I mean, like,
He was an amazing host. We came out there and got to hang out with him. He's got some awesome friends and roommates out there. So shout out to Nino. And is it Tom or John? John. Shout out to John. They have such beautiful hair. I thought he had two hot chicks living with him in his apartment, and then they turned around and they're dudes. Just beautiful hair on those dudes.
I need to make them NFTs.
Yeah, so I want to appreciate that. You got anything to plug, Rags? Also, after I introduce you, I'm going to cut you off. If you guys are hungry for more crypto Kool-Aid, there is a crypto Kool-Aid and Rags After Dark, right? So go check that one out to eat up some more, get another big swig of Kool-Aid. And what else you got going on, Rags?
No, I don't believe, I could be wrong, correct me if I am, but I don't think we've said anything about Feeder's beard this entire stream.
It's gingery and delicious, sir.
So Feeder, it's looking mighty biblical. It looks like you've got a little miracle grow in there. Maybe some anabolic steroids. I don't know. Like,
I just want to say thanks for coming from the barn raising straight to the stream. Like, I find that you would take that time off from churning butter, raising barns to come and hang out with us and talk to us about tech. That's very progressive of you.
My pleasure. I was actually out in the garden preparing some herbs for steak and bake.
And a double shout out to Feeder, right? He had one of the most emotional things back in the day about paying off his student loans. And like, I know more than most that the extrapolation of the monster is huge. And once you realize that you can get freedom from it and then take that freedom and build into the community, it is the only source of freedom you'll ever find, because everything else just wants to use you alive. And that's what Feeder showed everyone back. Was it pre-big payday you did that, didn't it?
Yeah,
it's crazy how time has passed. But like, it was wild. And a double shout out to Feeder to show what the practicality of getting in early, sticking to your guns, paying off the evil demons that hold you by the bootstraps, and then keeping on going gives you. Because when people say, when are you going to cash out? I'll be like, well, I got a plan on that, but I already know what the plan is to get me out of all of the problems, not just a small problem of when do I get paycheck.
Yep. And stick to your plan. I'll tell you too, is don't listen to people online or saying, oh, never sell your hex, this, that. It's a tool. It's a tool to make money. Like, yes, that's what we're in it for, right? So if you want to pay off some debt, you want to pay off a loan, your house, whatever, do it. It feels great. It frees you.
The ultimate hex flex is freedom, by far. Freedom of time, freedom of obligation, freedom to pursue your passion. I mean, there's no cooler hex flex than that. I don't care. You show me the yachts and the Lamborghinis, I'll take freedom every day.
On top of that, you just do it smartly. Like, anyone can put a fucking sell order in under spot. If you want to be an insanely crazy hexagon, put a couple cents under spot. That way they have to bleed into you to be your wall. And you just adjust that wall and just keep having it run on up, right? If you have the choice to be like, well, I kind of maybe need some money eventually, I'm just going to be one of the iron phalanxes of the 300 Spartans, right? And you just put that there. And so someone, when they bleed into you, and now you have that USDC, you can choose to rebuy that hex and just pump the price back up and toss it 15 years, right? You can be the people that chooses what to do with those sell dumps. And so if you want to take it a little bit off and take it off the market, cool. But you can choose to be that iron phalanx there. And if you don't need to sell, you just buy that shit right back up on spot and then pump the price back up. Yeah, you're going to get slippage. Maybe not be the best for your own bag, but if you want to be a defender of the army, that's what you do, because you pump it for everybody. And so you can defend at a limit. It's the same thing that you can do with liquidity providing, right? So if you want to take impermanent loss, you can use impermanent loss to get out as a whale and just take the slippage and eat that slippage, but you never press the red candle. You can do those things as an educated member of the community.
Awesome. And where can people find you, Kool-Aid? You're we're at home. If you guys are lucky enough to go to Love Burn down in Miami, he'll be down there hanging out. I'm so jealous of that.
I know. No, it's really not hard to find me, but like I said, I was an ICO influencer in 17. I want to get on much more streams with Rags. What he does with kids and educating people and helping is hugely important to my heart. And so, like, you can find me if you need me, but I don't have any streams. I just cameo, and I find it better that way till I leave the $1 billion game that I'm on.
Appreciate it. Thanks again for everyone coming. Are you guys headed out to the March stuff in Vegas? You hoping to get to Maddie's HexCon? See you guys there. We still need to lure RagstoRiches out there like a kid with candy.
I got a spare ticket. I bought two. And
hey, there you go. What we do is we get a van with no windows, and then we put Rich's question, and then we just leave a rag out in front, and then we get him in there. We slam the door shut.
Yes.
Let's see. I mean, you might, if you're a good salesman, I might agree to that. David, I'll rub your feet for you. How about that?
Oh, dude, no, it's out of the house, bro. I got an extra ticket. I got a room. All you gotta do is get your ass down there.
All right.
I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there.
We'll have a breakout talk, right? And I think that us doing this and getting breakout talks is important to give more of a future mindset of what people need to build and what people need to actually think about. And I think it's good.
There's going to be so many amazing conversations going on in Vegas in March, and then I think you just compound that compared to the conversations that are going to go on in September. Like the rate that we're growing as a community and strength and members and knowledge it's incredible, and I can understand why that's what Richard is the most proud of. So I salute you guys. Thanks for coming here. To everyone else, subscribe to our channels. Come check our stuff out. I still have the Zoom meetings that I'm putting up. They're geared towards onboarding and brand new people. I try to break everything down to the very beginning and understanding and translate all this jargon into English and kind of give people an idea of what we're doing here and some of the things that are going on, giving updates on things like that. So proof of single. We can't have, this is why we can't have serious conversations and nice things.
We were doing so well for so long until he just derailed it.
That's right. Yeah. Proof of birth. POV.
I'm gonna go see if the Niners can upset the Rams the way that the Bengals upset them. The
is
Chiefs,
that on the night?
That's on right now.
Oh,
right
wow.
now.
Cool.
Yeah. So I like I said, I honestly can't. I thank you for the bottom of my heart for being here and making this happen. And every Sunday that we can make it, we'll be doing this. So check back in. Shout out to all the other streaming Hexicans. I love listening to you guys' stuff all the time, and I'm going to go back and dive into Crypto Kool-Aid's After Dark for sure after this.
It's a good one. And again, Rags, I can come on anytime with you. Same thing with you, Extra Vision and Feeder. I mean, I'm a sufferer of student loan debt. You made the Mookie, as they said in the original Batman, when you cleared your student loan debt out, and it was impressive and heartfelt, and I knew that everything was going right forward. Now, how do we make it that no one ever has student loan debt again? That's positive.
X-Ray, I want to say this real quick, X-Ray, and everybody in the chat and everybody's watching this. I think about 2 streams ago, I was supposed to be on, and I bailed out on you. And I want to apologize. That was my fault. I didn't put it in my calendar the right way. So that was my fault, and I want to publicly apologize to you, and then also tell you that I hate you.
That's right.
Thank you for that, the hug and the kick. That's really that's what I'm here for.
Do not like, do not subscribe.
Do not subscribe, do not comment. And cheers to all my homies. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you here next week.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Take care, guys.